Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to be able to pay honor to a man who deserves honor. March the 1st would have been Ralph Waldo Ellison, and we know him as Ralph Ellison, his 100th birthday. Ralph Ellison is a proud son of Oklahoma City. He's a graduate of Douglas High School in Oklahoma City. He hopped trains to Tuskegee to go to Tuskegee College on a music scholarship. He's a musician, he's a sculptor, and he's the writer of the famous work, The Invisible Man. It was the defining work of African American literature in the 1950s and still continues today as being one of the defining works to be able to point our culture to not ignore racial injustice, social injustice, and economic injustice that still occurs in our nation today. His work ethic, his passion for education, and his passion for justice is a great example to all Americans.
He's considered one of the most important writers of the 20th century in the United States. Great literature is something that anyone can relate to no matter what time they live in, but it's also something that breaks the mold it came from, so it contributes something completely new. And Invisible Man does that in this really powerful way.
And really, Mr. Ellison was trying to bring about this idea that everyone matters. It's beyond race. Simply because you are human, you matter.
He went off to school on a music scholarship, and that was his main interest. It was while he was at school that he started reading the great books.
He was so interested in learning to be a good writer because it wasn't something that came naturally. He would actually copy and imitate Hemingway and Faulkner and just like write their writing out to see how they used language, because he was such a student of the craft his whole life.
Back in Oklahoma City, though, I didn't feel like his reputation was nearly as large. It was great that he had a library named after him, but I didn't sense that people here really understood what a big deal he was around the world. And he wasn't even inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame until, I think, well after his death.
I think, from what I gather, it took him a long time to figure out how to fit Oklahoma in his writing. And a lot of it's in that unfinished last novel. I think he was really interested in writing a book that was about American identity, but also how Oklahoma and the West fit into that identity.
I think he was a man before his time, actually. You can sit down and read his writings, and they're just as relevant today.
I think Ellison's a perfect example of why it's so important to teach English skills at the primary level. When you're talking about verbal skills or written skills, vocabulary, spelling, all of the things that we might think are very practical necessities of life, and yet a handful of people will take them to extraordinary levels.
He was a writer, he was an artist, he was a musician. And so the foundation wants to develop programming in those areas. We want to definitely make a difference in critical thinking among young people.
The Ralph Ellison Foundation has an incredible potential to be the holder of the Ellison legacy moving forward, long term. And Oklahoma City ought to want that very badly.
I think it's important that this particular organization continue its work and continue to share the extraordinary man that he was.
He stands alone. He stands alone in history.
I think Oklahoma will be proud of not just Ralph Ellison, but of his legacy as we move forward.